The sun machine is coming down,
And we're
and we're
gonna have
gonna
a
have a
party. Wow, that
party.
was so
Party.
unsynchronized.
Wow. All right, well, we're done. That was it, guys. That's episode 2.
We'll see it.
Bye.
We'll see you next time.
That, of course, is the closing track that we were both horribly singing, Memory of a Free Festival, off today's record that we're going to talk about. Episode 2, Season 2, David Bowie, Space Oddity, or David Bowie, or Man of Words, Man of Music. Whichever title you want to go with. How you doing,
Or
Rob?
David Bowie 1969, because don't
Or
isn't that how
David
they
Bowie
distinguish it? Like,
1969.
yeah. Sorry.
How you doing?
How am I doing? I'm doing fantastic. Fantastic.
Doing pretty good. There it is. Okay. I'm just gonna throw it out there that so I was just telling Rob off mic before we just hit record. I'm a little tired today, guys. It's been a long couple weeks. Thank God Thanksgiving break is coming.
Yes.
So I sound a little ugh this episode. Well, I apologize. Putting
And
it out there now.
and also, like, as of the posting of this, it'll be the day after Thanksgiving. So we hope you had a good Thanksgiving, everybody. Yay!
Yeah, that's true. You're right. Day after. So happy Turkey Day, happy Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Fuck Black Friday. Don't participate in that shit.
Yeah, just stay home and listen to this podcast. So
that's right. There you go. Sleep in, because you're gonna have a lot of food in your belly
and a lot of leftovers. Just enjoy it.
Quite a bit of alcohol you might drink. Maybe, maybe not. The point is, sleep in Friday, guys. Sleep in. Get up, have a cup of joe, cup of tea, and listen to episode 2 of discography discussion.
Yes.
Fuck Black Friday. Enough of my Black Friday rant. We are, of course, as mentioned, we are talking about David Bowie's sophomore release, originally called David Bowie, actually. This was another self-titled. This record was not changed to the title Space Oddity until the 1972 reissue, which that's the version I have on vinyl.
For all intents and purposes, and just to make things easier, do you want to just refer to this one as Space Oddity?
Oh, no, for sure.
Okay.
I was just throwing in some fun facts. Because I don't think a lot of people know that that was not the original title to this album. And, of course, for reasons why it got changed, we all refer to it as Space Oddity, of course. But just a little fun fact I was throwing out there.
There's also several different album covers, which I'll probably put... If you're watching on YouTube, you can probably see it now already, but I'll try to put...
Yeah, I'm looking at the album covers now, and I have the RCA one that was released in 72, so it's the one... it's titled Space Oddity, and it's like looks like Ziggy Bowie. I don't know. That's the one I have on vinyl. Do you have this one on vinyl?
I don't have it on vinyl, no. Nope.
You son of a bitch. Yep. Okay, then.
Yep, I failed. So you have the one... Oh, I see. You have the one where he's kind of got red hair...
Yep.
Yeah, okay, you have that one. The one I'm used to, I had the CD. This fun fact, one of the first actual studio albums of Bowie I owned, and I owned the one with... I mean, it pretty much, I would guess that's a picture of David from that period. He's kind of got like the hippie kind of hair, curly hair. It's got the like blue spots in the background, and it's like just his disembodied head. I have that one. So... Well, I had that on CD anyway.
I'm actually not sure if I have it on CD. As far as CDs go, I've been keeping up with the box sets that they've been putting out the last few years. So I have the 5 years box set, which covers Space Oddity to Aladdin Sane.
Oh, okay.
I digress. Let's get into it. Anything that we need to discuss with Bowie this era before we get into it?
Well, I guess probably just the fact that this album came out after a 2-year hiatus or so of
as far as I'm aware, he didn't tour for the first album.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of what else. It seemed that his label Decca Darum had dropped. Is it Darum or it's Darum, right? Yeah.
Darum
had dropped him
Duran, but it's Darum.
Yeah, Darum dropped him because the first album didn't do so hot for some reason. So it seemed as if at this time he was kind of regrouping and trying to...
for some reason. I wonder why.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, just from some quick reading, The
Mm-hmm.
only thing that I think he did in between is he apparently put out a movie called Love You Till Tuesday, of course, named after the song from the first record. But other than that, I think Mr. Bowie was reevaluating things, just figuring things out.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's
But
I don't really have much background about it myself, so
well, okay, let's get into it then.
this is
So,
an actual easy episode here.
and guys, that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
So something we forgot to do for the first episode that is sound of or has become Sound of Music tradition is let's start out reading out the personnel, people that played on this record.
Okay, so on this record, we have obviously Mr. David Bowie himself on vocals, acoustic guitar, stylophone on Space Oddity, which I got a little anecdote about that. Chord organ on Memories of a Free Festival and Kalimba, so he played quite a few instruments. Tim Renwick on electric guitar, Keith Christmas on acoustic guitar, Mick Wayne on guitar, the great maestro himself, Rick Wakeman on mellotron and harpsichord. Tony Visconti played bass guitar, flute, recorder, and produced the album. This was the first collaboration of many between Bowie and Visconti.
Yes, with the exception, though, and we'll get into it. With the exception, Tony Visconti did not produce the song Space Oddity.
Okay.
That was actually produced. Oh, I just had the guy Gus Dodgian. He produced that track. Tony Visconti produced the rest of this record. Again, we'll get into it in a minute. Go ahead.
Okay, and then Herbie Flowers on bass guitar, Terry Cox on drums, Paul Buckmaster on cello, and then it credits Benny Marshall and Friends, harmonica and backing vocals on Memories of a Free Festival. Now, there's a couple. There's two main people that are not credited on this album that are technically on the album that I want to acknowledge because they're both very important. One
of them.
One is Mark Bolan from T-Rex. He actually sings backup, I think, on Memories of a Free Festival. He's one of the many people.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Yep. Yeah.
Him amongst others, but Mark Bolan was the name that really, I was like, oh, cool, because I'm a huge T-Rex guy. And the other being Mick Ronson, who actually played on this, I believe on, I wrote it down here actually. He played, well, I'll get to it when we talk about the song.
He plays on Wild Eyed Boy from Free Cloud.
Yes, he does, yeah. And he's uncredited, but that, of course, is very prolific because he would go on to, much bigger things with Bowie and obviously become part of the Spiders from Mars and do a whole bunch of other stuff with Dylan and,
He also played, not to cut you off, he also played on a couple of the B-sides that we'll talk about after.
Yep.
And he played on the re-recorded version of Memory of a Free Festival.
Yes.
Throwing that out there, too, which he was credited for.
So, yeah, there's quite a lot of talent on this record, that's for sure. It's quite a stacked record compared to the last one. So, at least personnel-wise.
And then as far as release dates and charting, this, of course, is the second studio album released by David Bowie, of course. It was released under Philips Records in the UK and also by Mercury Records, and that was under Man of Words, Man of Music in the US, November 14th, 1969. As I mentioned earlier in the episode, it was reissued in 1972 by RCA Records, which several subsequent Bowie albums are under RCA, as Space Oddity, which of course comes from the opening track. And this was right around Ziggy era when Bowie skyrocketed. So of course at that point it had reached number 5 on the UK singles charts. And as we were just talking about off mic, this album has been re-released several times.
Yeah, yes.
1984, 1990, 1999, 2009, 2015, and there was literally just recently a 2019 reissue as well that was just released. I think it's a remix and everything.
I think that the original version that I would have had to have played on this over and over would have had to have been the 1999 remaster, I want to say. And then later on, it was the 2009 version that I was really, really familiar with.
That would make sense. I don't have this one on CD. At least I don't
Yeah.
think I do. But I had a lot of the CDs I had before I started getting the box sets were the 1999 CDs.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I have this one on vinyl. It's the 72 issue, but yeah, no, this this has been released several times. But anything else you want to add before we get into it?
Now, the two that are on Spotify right now are the 2015 remaster and the brand new 2019 master. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's the
Okay.
2015 remaster, whether you listen to the record on its own or if you listen to the 5 year box set, which also includes the 2015 remaster. And then, yeah, as we both just mentioned, the 2019 mix is on there as well.
So God, I mean, seriously, I'll just say up front that I listened to for prepping for this video. The versions I heard were the 2015 remaster and the 2019 remaster. But this being said, because I got this pulled up in front of me too, I have heard at least 4 different versions of this album, different master. So, and I'm pretty sure I've heard the vinyl at least once. So you're looking at like 6 different versions, or 5, whatever it is, 5 or 6 different versions, probably in total. So that's crazy.
No, it's absurd.
Yeah.
But all right, so let's get into it. Let's jump right into it.
Mm-hmm.
So, as usual, guys, as we go through the record track by track, we'll point out when side 1 starts and ends, and then of course do the same for side 2. A couple B sides to talk about as well, alternate takes, all that fun stuff. So let's get right into it. Side 1, track 1, of course, is Space Oddity. Now, Robert, how would you react if I told you I can't stand this song?
Wow.
And I think it's the most overrated song of all time.
Well, you guys, it was wonderful doing this podcast, and I enjoyed it, but I'm afraid that I'm going to have to step down.
It's a good thing I'm not going to actually tell you that, because this song is fucking fantastic.
Oh, thank God. My heart went in my throat. Okay, good.
I mean, look, I mean, especially coming off the first record, this song, I mean, and this almost wasn't even included on the record originally. We'll talk about that in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But God, this is like the go-to single. This is like a hit song done right. I mean, it's got all of these amazing dynamic shifts throughout the song, some trippy vibes. I mean, it came out in 1969, so of course, very, of the time, but still sounds contemporary. It's also got these like structural intricacies and just great riffs throughout. I mean, this song, it's, what is it, just at the 6 minute mark, and it just goes by. It doesn't even feel like it's 6 minutes. It's so good.
Could you imagine being a kid in like 1969? We landed on the moon. Star Trek was still like brand new on TV. You had like all kinds of, everybody was into space.
Odyssey.
Yeah, you had 2001: A Space Odyssey, which, by the way, this was partly inspired by, from what I read, which is
partly, yes.
Yeah, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, you had 2001: A Space Odyssey. You had Planet of the Apes. You had this, just like science fiction and space had really just taken over, and everybody was like on acid and shit anyway. But I digress. But could you imagine hearing this song in 1969 when it came out, when all that stuff was going on? It must have been incredible. It's like, it's no wonder it was such a success. But that aside, it's just a really, really well written song, and
for sure. And really, this is the introduction to what would become many Bowie personas, and that's of course Major Tom.
Yes, of course. For me personally, this was the first song that I ever liked by David Bowie. This was the song that I was like, when my dad recommended Bowie, I was like, what song should I put on? He's like, oh, put on, because you know how like dads can never get titles of songs right? He's like, oh, look up David Bowie, Major Tom. I'm like, all right.
Major Tom, that sounds about right.
Yeah, so, yeah, but this song just blew me away when I first heard it, and I still really, really love this song. I get excited every time it comes on the radio.
Same.
Or whatever,
in whatever capacity it comes on. I mean, even my girlfriend, who we're It's very difficult to find compromise when it comes to music sometimes. But she usually tolerates me putting on Bowie, but even she loves this song. We're both
Mm-hmm.
always just singing out to it every time. I mean, how can you not like this song? Um, I want to talk about the Major Tom character for a second
Okay, sure,
because
go ahead.
um, it almost seemed like Bowie had an interesting relationship with this song, and it almost felt like there were times in his career where he really made it a point to distance himself from the song,
Mm-hmm.
but then there were times where he embraced it. I mean, it came back again in the early 70s once he became really popular with Zig Stardust.
Mm-hmm.
He re recorded it again in 1979, which is
Mm-hmm.
not a good version. Stick with this version.
Yeah.
Um,
Got Ashes to Ashes refers
Not
to.
to mention the character Major Tom
Yep.
is mentioned in other songs. Ashes to Ashes is literally a sequel to Space Oddity. I will say I like that track better, but we'll get into that when we talk
Mm-hmm.
about that record. Hello Space Boys, another song where Major Tom is revisited.
Mm-hmm.
And although it hasn't been officially confirmed, if you've ever seen the Black Star music video,
Mm-hmm.
it looks like we have a very dead Major Tom in that video. But again, I don't think that's been confirmed. But my point is this character thematically has been revisited by Bowie throughout his career.
I was so again in preparation for doing this. I watched a video and it was a breakdown of Tony Visconti and he was talking. It was basically him in the studio and he was talking about Space Oddity and Bowie and obviously they were very good friends and I know I didn't realize until now that you said he didn't produce the song, but he obviously was very familiar with the song. So anyway, the one of the versions that I was just saying for is the 2019 version of this record that just came out, and he was talking about Space Oddity, and he had a very very interesting take on the song where it wasn't didn't talk so much of the lyrics of just like a guy going into space. He was talking more about the notion of isolation and the idea of being very far away and far and removed from the world, but still being able to see kind of the universe outside of your own isolation. It was a really interesting take that he had on the tune that I appreciated.
And I think that's a great take because
Yeah.
even thinking of the Ashes to Ashes music video
Mm-hmm.
and the Black Star music video comes to mind again. I mean, Ashes to Ashes alone. I mean, the line, what is it? We know Major Tom's a junkie.
Yep.
That scene in the music video. I mean, he's totally. You want to talk about isolation, and isolation in general is another theme that Bowie visits a lot in his
Yes.
music.
Yes.
But speaking of Tony Visconti, so I wanted to talk about that. Again, I'm not entirely sure if this is something that's been confirmed by Tony himself, but apparently when, excuse me, when they were going to include this song on the album, he wanted nothing to do with it, and that's why he didn't produce it.
Hmm.
The same time that Space Oddity came out or was released, I'm sorry, was also the Apollo moon landing
Yes. Mm-hmm.
that same month. So he saw it as this cash grab and was like, I want nothing to do with it. The one article I was reading before we started recording, he was saying, like, oh, you got to understand, I was a hippie at the time, dropping acid all the time. So, here we were with this, this opportunity of like, this cash grab is how he puts it. And I just wanted nothing to do with it. So I guess that's why
Yeah, makes sense.
Gus Dudgian, if I'm pronouncing that right,
Mm-hmm.
who was the engineer on this album, was the one that produced it instead.
Hmm. That's interesting. That I didn't know.
Yeah.
Cool. And we
Um,
have to talk
but
about the fact that like some of the people that play on the song, specifically I got to mention Rick Wakeman who plays Mellotron on it. Unbelievable stuff. I mean, I couldn't believe like, and this will be a theme throughout the next few albums of Bowie's career, and I believe he comes back later on, but. I wasn't until I was a Yes
doesn't
fan.
he play on Hunky Dory as well?
That is all Rick Wakeman. But it wasn't until years later when I was a Yes fan that I was like, holy crap, he played Mellotron on Space Oddity. He played piano on Changes. He played piano on Life on Mars. I mean, the entire Hunky Dory album.
A lot of that earlier stuff.
Like, holy crap, it's Rick Wakeman. So the Mellotron is a really big part of the song, too, and gives it that kind of spacey, 60s sort of psychedelic folk sound. But it's also at the same time very unique. It's got its own kind of, got its own sound. I don't think it sounds, I don't think it's trying to sound like everything else at the time.
No, I don't think so either. I'd have to agree, and that's something we spoke about on the first episode with that butthole of a record that we spoke of, and we did also talk about how Bowie was always kind of like a chameleon in that he was very very much in tune with of the times with each record of his, and you hear that a lot on subsequent records as well too. And although I do hear the influence of music of this time in this song as well, I do agree that it's very much a one of a kind. Like I couldn't really picture any other band doing a song like this.
Yes, yeah, I totally agree.
I mean, there are elements that remind me of King Crimson. There are elements that remind me of the Beatles. There are elements that remind me of the Velvet Underground in this track, but
it's
again, those are just very brief moments. I mean, from start to finish, this really was something of its own. And that's what you really have to admire. Really have to admire about this song.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a classic. There's a reason it's as successful as it is.
One other thing before I move on to the next track, I was kind of debating with myself last night when I was listening to this record, which I listened to several times the past couple of weeks. Do you think this song is his most popular song, or do you think that would go to Heroes?
I feel like there's a small handful of them that it's hard to say what's the most popular. Like if
it's one or the other.
But I could also put it also depends on what region. If you're talking like the UK, I think probably the biggest song in the UK he ever did was Life on Mars. That song is huge in the UK.
Over Space Oddity?
I think so, yeah. I would argue that, yeah.
Interesting.
But, I mean, I would say, though, that it's tough. You're right. Heroes was an immensely popular song, too.
So, at the very least, in the U.S., it would have to be Space Oddity or Heroes, right?
Yeah. Ziggy Stardust comes to mind a little bit, and Changes
it would be up there, but, I mean...
mind a little bit, but yeah, Space, this might be his biggest song, at least here. So, yeah, I'll grant you that.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on to track 2, Unwashed and Somewhat Slightly Dazed. I love this song.
Me too, yeah.
From the moment it kicks in, that harmonica, which is throughout the track. This is a very Bob Dylan influence track for sure. The second half of this song is my favorite, though, and it just goes into that killer jam at the end.
The harmonica, the guitars,
Yeah. This is always one that seems to be very divided in the Bowie community. I was reading an article in Rolling Stone around the time Bowie passed away, and some other magazine posted a list, and they mentioned this song, that this song was like they felt was, a song that was like really important at the Bowie canon in terms of his development, as we progress into the 70s, whereas Rolling Stone, of course, just dismissed it as this like track, whatever.
Well, this might be the first time. I think this will be the first time this is said on this podcast. But Rolling Stone magazine is pure utter trash. So
yeah, and it won't be the last time that's said on this podcast. But I this is a cool song. I love it. I've always loved this song.
I kind of like how it translates. Transitions from Space Oddity, because Space Oddity is kind of like a little bit slower, spacier kind of thing, and then you kind of got a more upbeat folk rocker is what I would call this one.
Yeah, definitely.
You definitely get some electric guitar in there, and which I really like on there. And I think I should say, and you kind of touched on this too, is that I really think this song, even more than Space Oddity, by this point really foreshadows kind of what Bowie would become in the 70s a little bit. Especially with the way that the song is arranged.
Yeah, I think so. I think in terms of, yeah, I mean, if we want to talk about arrangement, I think this song definitely could fit on the next record for sure.
Yeah. And at times the guitar reminds me of stuff that Mick Ronson was doing a little later. I don't know. It's definitely he takes a big step with this song, I think, for sure.
Oh, definitely. And thematically, this song is about Bowie's former girlfriend, who's mentioned a lot throughout this record. There's even a song with her name in it. Hermione, I just had her last name. Where did it go?
Hermione, I think it is. H-E-R-M...
Is it pronounced Hermione?
H-E-R-M-I-O-N-E. I'm not sure. I think it's Hermione.
Hermione or Hermione
or whatever, yeah.
Farthingale, who is mentioned in this song. Of course, Letter to Hermione or Hermione is about her. She's also mentioned in Occasional Dream as well. But I've also read up some other interesting things about this song. This actually popped up earlier when I was doing some research. This was one of Bowie's... I don't even know. I'm so unprepared with my notes today, guys. I told you I was going to be off today.
That's all right.
I'll just read you the quote. The feel of the song was meant to show Bowie's feelings after his father's death, which I can see, there are definitely themes of death in this song. The song also seems to be about social structure, as the girl in the song is very wealthy compared to the narrator. That, of course, would be Bowie's girlfriend. Bowie said that the song was written because he got funny stares from people. And this was actually, during the sessions, the first song produced by Tony Visconti.
Wow. Yeah, I think it's a great track. I don't think... Again, this is another one of the longer tracks in the album, and as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't overstay its welcome. Especially that jam at the end, like you said, is really, really good.
That jam is so killer. Yeah. This is a great track. Okay, so let's move on to track 3, which, speaking of, is Letter to Hermione, or Hermione. Is that how you said it?
I don't know how to say her name. We'll say it's Hermione. So
Hermione, okay. I never really got into this song, even listening to this record the past couple of weeks. It just hasn't been a grower. In fact, I've listened to this album, God, probably, I had to guess 6 times these past 2 weeks, and it's just so unmemorable. I still couldn't really tell you much about it, other than I just never really got into it, so I don't really have much to say about it.
It's not like a I think it's a good song, but it's not like a great song. It fits with the album. What I wrote was, I thought it was it's a lovely, dreamy little folk ballad.
Yeah,
very good guitar and sweet lyrics and vocals, especially when it seems to be just about it's about the breakup, I guess, with him and her, and it seems like some of the lyrics are him kind of observing how she is with her new fling or boyfriend or whoever it is, and he's it seems like there's a couple lines in the song where he's like, kind of reflecting on like why that isn't him, but aside from the lyrics, like I said, it's kind of a nice little quiet piece. His vocals are really, really lovely on it, and some of the melody on this one really remind me of A Day in the Life. I don't know if you caught that.
You cut off when you said that. I heard some of the melody of the song reminds you, and then
reminds me of A Day in the Life by the Beatles.
Oh, yeah.
Did you catch that?
I can totally see that. Yeah. There's definitely some Beatles influence on this album. Another track that we'll talk about in a little bit. Very Beatles influence.
Yes, I think we're going to be thinking of the same one, but I definitely noticed it on this too, though. There's definitely like a few lines where it really reminded me. I was like, that melody sounds familiar, and then I thought about it. I was like, Day in the Life, easy. So
yeah, interesting.
I kind of appreciated the little Beatles nod there.
Oh, of course, always appreciate a good Beatles nod. I think the other thing with this song too is it's coming off of two amazing tracks.
Yes,
Two
yes.
stone cold classics in my opinion. So I guess in that sense, it's not really fair. But yeah, I don't know. It's fine. I don't. It's not a bad track by any means, but it's never one I've you know.
I
It
didn't
doesn't
notice.
end up on my Bowie playlist.
I
That's for
didn't
sure.
notice this till now, but I really feel actually looking at the first side of this record, um, it's kind of alternated. Like Space Oddity is definitely a more it's not like a high tempo track. It's it's spacey. It's kind of like, I mean, it's very lyric focused. You can it's definitely telling a story. Unwashed and somewhat slightly dazed is kind of a jammer, like a jam kind of rocker. And then Letter to Hermione kind of goes back to that kind of softer folk sound. And then we get to the fourth track here, and it kind of goes back a little bit towards the unwashed and somewhat slightly dazed sound, where it gets, a little bit, I don't want to use the term heavier, but you know what I mean, a little faster, a little bit more of a rocker, you know what I'm saying? So interesting little theme here on the first side.
Was that your transition to track 4? Because if it was a very good transition.
To track 4, which is
Signet Committee. This is a fucking great song. I love this track. This one actually became a grower as I've been revisiting this record these past couple of weeks. Prior to that, this was always one that I felt, like moments I really liked, but, too long. And maybe I still feel that way to an extent that it can be trimmed down by like a minute.
Yeah.
But all in all, this is a fantastic song. I love the sort of like Western vibe in the beginning. I'm not really too sure what instrument that is. That could be the mellotron. I'm not sure. But definitely has like a Western-y feel in that intro. I love Bowie's vocals on this track. Kind of gets like really hazy in parts.
Yes, I like his vocals a lot too.
This is just progressive folk. That's like the best way I could, describe the sound of this song.
Wow, it's funny, you pretty much said most of what I said. I just wrote, the vocals are really great. It has a bit of a progressive rock feel, probably, or as you said, progressive folk. Definitely, I would say this is the closest he ever got to that kind of sound. Well,
I would say
maybe
this
not.
and
maybe
this
not.
and maybe The Width of a Circle.
Yeah, I could see that
off
too.
of The Man Who Sold the World are probably the two closest he's gotten to prog.
And then it kind of has a melancholy vibe, and I took the lyrics as kind of, and then I actually read and confirmed this a little bit, but it seems as if he's criticizing, like my thought was he was criticizing the mentality, like a person's mentality who wants to be, like, sort of, for lack of a better term, a person who's a sort of freedom fighter kind of person, but they kind of blindly follow, which apparently is what this actually was about. So I was pretty pleased with myself for analyzing the lyrics that way. But he apparently specifically he was criticizing the revolutionary mentality of the time, and basically this notion of just blindly following somebody just because you agree with them, which I kind of appreciate. It's kind of cool.
It's very and it's funny because that totally makes sense because I have in my notes that it's very dystopian almost, and that totally fits with that. Which here we are talking about themes. Also something that this man will visit on subsequent records.
Yes.
I mean, God, that's Diamond Dogs right there.
Yeah, it's the entire album.
That's the entire album.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a great track.
I think I do have a criticism of it though, and it's the same criticism you have. I think this could be shorter. I think it could be like 7 minutes, maybe,
I agree.
and it would be fine. But the ending of the song is really, really good. It's worth sitting through. It's that's where it really gets kind of proggy, which I like. So
the ending is great. It's almost like at the maybe like around the 6.5, 7 minute mark.
Yeah.
It kind of gets a little, all right, like, come on, let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
And then that last minute, like you said, is fantastic. So if this were just trimmed down by a minute and a half, perfect. But all in all, this is a great track.
Totally.
I was reading too that apparently this was developed from an earlier composition of Bowie's that had been written more of the style, like more in the style of Simon and Garfunkel.
Mm-hmm.
And the original name of this track was called "Lover to the Dawn."
Oh,
So
okay.
I don't know if there's a recording of this. I'd be curious. But yeah, just a little fun fact about this track.
Awesome.
Um, all right, and so that closes at side one actually.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get right into side two. Which before we get into side two, one thing I did forget to note here is, and I think it's not listed on Spotify, but it is listed on a lot of the CD track lists as well as the vinyl. But there is a track. What is it called?
Are you talking about the hidden track?
The hidden track, yeah. It was originally listed after Unwashed and Somewhat Slightly Dazed.
Mm-hmm. The track is, hold on, I can tell you in just a second. I just saw it. Oh man, what was the name of it? Hold on, I'll just cut this out real quick.
And I'm just getting it now. Sorry, guys. Here we go. Don't Sit Down.
Don't Sit Down, that's it, yep.
Don't Sit Down. And it's just a little neat jam. It's 43 seconds long, but yeah, that's when that appears in between Unwashed and Letter to Hermione, Tomato, whatever you want to call it.
I read that like later after listening to this album a few times. I didn't even notice it. I was like, oh, I just thought it was part of the song. So.
Ugh. All right. Well, okay. So side two.
Yes.
All right, let's do it. So, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, so side two opens up with Janine, and something that I noted with this song is vocally, this song kind of reminds me more of mature David Bowie singing. Kind of reminded me of some of his vocals on some of his late 70s records and 80s records. So that was just something, and really the only thing that stands out in this song. Other than that, I just think it's an okay song.
I really got a Cat Stevens vibe from that song.
Oh, interesting.
Yes,
okay.
the way that the chorus is, the way he's. This could totally be a Cat Stevens song. I can hear it, like just like the Janine. Like I don't know the way he's singing it. I really wouldn't be surprised if he was influenced by him, at least on.
I can
on
see
this
that
track.
now that you're saying that.
Otherwise, I thought it was a pretty middle of the road song. It wasn't a bad song, but it just wasn't very. Like it didn't blow me away or anything. But I did kind of appreciate the fact that I at least think he was influenced by Cat Stevens.
I would say it's one of my least favorites. I'm looking over
here.
the rest of the track list, and there's one other song that I would say I would put above it as far as my least favorite. But yeah, I mean, this is just another song that I just don't think it's really that memorable, other than Bowie's vocal approach to it. So I don't really have anything else to say about it.
Yeah, same.
Okay, so let's. Oh boy, so let's move on to the next track, "An Occasional Dream." Same thing. I think this one's just okay. I think the vocals are pretty solid throughout. We're continuing the theme of his girlfriend, Hermione. Either way, she's a bitch, right? I mean, ex-girlfriend, right? Either way, she's a fucking bitch.
Well, yeah, if she dumped Bowie, then that's probably true.
Yeah.
This is the first real difference. I love this track. This is one of my favorite tracks on the album. I've always liked this since I was a kid and I first heard this album. I love how whimsical it is. I love the kind of soft and dreamy vocals of it, and of course I love the flute, which I did not realize again until we started doing this that Tony Visconti plays the flute on, which is pretty awesome.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a really, really awesome piece,
interesting,
or really, really awesome song. I love it. It's kind of pretty different for him. I think it's gives me like a very English folk sort of vibe. Love it. I love this track. Cannot say enough about this track. But guys, I am a sucker for the flute, so I'm just gonna say if it's got flute on it.
Jethro Tull.
Oh yeah. Jethro Tull is one of my favorite bands. So like, yeah, it's I love this track. I can't say enough about it. But I will say that the lyrics are probably, they're not remarkable. But knowing now that they were about his girlfriend at the time, I can totally see that. It seems to be it's him dreaming about, how things were, and I guess wishing that they were still the same. That's pretty much my take on it anyway.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm as I'm looking at this, side one is definitely the stronger side
I agree.
of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Side two is just yeah, I don't know, just not as into it, I guess. But I do like this next track 3, Wild Eyed Boy from Free Cloud.
Mm-hmm.
This is the song that we mentioned earlier with Mick Ronson's uncredited
Yes.
guitar playing there. Um, I will say about this song, there's a re-recorded version of this that was released as a B-side to Space Oddity
Mm-hmm.
that I like better. It's more stripped back,
Mm-hmm.
and we just get more Mick Ronson in the song, and that's never a bad thing.
No.
This is right, yeah. That's never a bad thing. This is a song where I feel this is a classic using an orchestra for the sake of using an orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
I just think the orchestral bits are a little much on this track.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people, I won't say who, but that like by default when they hear an orchestra in rock music, it's like the greatest thing since Beethoven. And look, there are several songs that use an orchestra very well. I mean, there are several groups that use orchestral music very well. I do, on the flip side, though, I do feel that it can be overwhelming and even a disservice to the song, and this track kind of proves that. I don't know if you've listened to the B-side version of this track,
I have not
but
heard
if you
the
haven't,
B-side version.
check it out.
I should check it out, yeah.
To me, that's the superior version. So that's my go-to version when I do listen to this track. So I kind of forgot that the album version was not way different, but different than the version I'm typically used to listening to.
If you need proof that not every rock song fits with an orchestra, just hear when Metallica tried to do it. That's your proof. Now, but then you get stuff like the Moody Blues, Days of Future Past, phenomenal, like awesome mix of rock and orchestral arrangements. Another one that comes to mind is Procol Harum and the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra. That's another really, really good one. But yeah, there's lots and lots of bands that try to do stuff with orchestras, and I don't know what some of them are thinking because they don't always. In this case, I think I haven't heard the other version, so I could see liking the other version better if it's stripped down. But I thought it was pretty good. I liked the. I think actually that they did add something to the track, and I have to say, like with this song in general, I kind of like the overall like mood of it, and I really also like his vocals in this song a lot.
I like his vocals too, and I always felt, and I pulled up this quote that kind of further validates this. I've always felt that this was one of the most audiographical songs he's ever written.
I think the lyrics on this are excellent. I really enjoy it.
I found this quote earlier today that I want to read really quick that really to me just validates that's what this song is really. And this is from Bowie himself saying that it was about the disassociated, the ones who feel as though they're left outside, which is how I felt about me. I always felt I was on the edge of events, the fringe of things, and left out. A lot of my characters in those early years seem to revolve around that feeling. It must have come from my own interior puzzlement at where I was. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Kind of gives a perspective on some of the other things he wrote even a little later, actually.
It gives perspective on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Not just on his music, but the man himself.
Yeah, you can definitely tell he was very kind of introspective kind of guy, you know?
Oh, for sure.
Like you said, throughout a lot of the stuff he wrote in his career, But yeah, the lyrics in this are a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit I guess abstract, just for lack of a better term. But yeah, they're not. It's not like something like Space Oddity where it's literally telling a story. The lyrics are a little bit kind of I guess abstract, since I can't think of another word. But I still think there's some really, really great stuff in there. You can kind of read if you really like. With this song, I was actually reading the lyrics along with it, and I thought there were some really cool lines in it.
Yeah, no, I think this is a highlight for sure.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite tracks. And again, check out that B-side version when you can with Mick Ronson.
I'm definitely going to do that.
Okay, so let's move on to track 4, side 2, God Knows I'm Good. And this is the one that I mentioned, or reference, I should say. This would be my least favorite song. This is just another one. It's not even memorable. The many times I've listened to this record, there's not really a whole lot I can tell you about it, other than when I do listen to this album, I'm like, oh yeah, this song. That's really about it.
I think this is a pretty good song, and I like the chorus. However, the lyrics puzzle me, because it's like,
how so?
It seems like I was again reading the lyrics to this, and I'm guessing it's about a lady. It seems like it's about a lady who's shoplifting, but I can't figure out if she's doing it out of desperation or just to see if she can get away with it. But then the chorus of God Knows That I'm Good, like, kind of, I think, hints that maybe she has to do it, and that even though she's doing this thing that's a bad thing, that, it's forgivable. And then somebody else, I went so far as to go to songmeanings.com for this, and somebody interpreted it as, like, it's a song about, it's kind of, the song references this thing that people do where they kind of justify it in their head with God, like their actions. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like this is, again, one of those songs that can be interpreted many ways. But yeah, the lyrics kind of were a bit thought-provoking for me for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, otherwise it's kind of an average track.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so let's move on to our closing track. Closing track to side 2, and of course of this record, and that is Memory of a Free Festival.
Mm-hmm.
So... oh boy, this song. This is a very goofy song.
Yeah.
It's just really the best way I can summarize it. But I do like it. It is a good song. It's just
it's not a bad album closer.
No, it's not.
It could stand to be like half as long, I would say.
So we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
I think this song kind of reminds me of Sympathy for the Devil a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Just where it goes throughout, but then the end of the song, the sun machine is coming down, very much reminds me of na 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 na.
Or even before that, I actually was thinking like all we are saying. I actually wrote down Hey Jude and that song specifically.
The very Hey Jude reminds me a lot of Hey Jude. I didn't think of Give Peace a Chance. That's a good point too.
Yeah.
I was reading a quote from one of Bowie's many biographers, David Buckley, who described the song, and he actually mentions Sympathy for the Devil as well. Sort of a trippy retake of the Stones' Sympathy for the Devil, but with a smiley lyric. The track was written as a homage to the free festival organized by the Beckenham Arts Lab, which was held at Croydon Road Recreation Ground in Beckenham on August 16, 1969. So a little interesting fun fact for you there. This one, there is also a re-recorded version of that they re-recorded in 1970, which was split into 2 parts, and that was intentional to make them sound like 2 separate songs.
Okay.
But also, again, is more like this version would not be out of place if it were on The Man Who Sold the World. We get Mick Ronson on that. We also get, what's the drummer's name? The drummer that plays on The Man Who Sold the World. He plays on it as well, too. I like that version as well. I don't know if you've heard the 2-part version.
No, I
But
have
to me,
not.
that's oh, okay. Well, check it out. That's also the superior version of Memory of a Free Festival. But what are your thoughts on this song? I've rambled on.
I pretty much summed it up. It's again sort of like it's a pretty decent album closer. The highlight for me was definitely the organ that Bowie plays himself. Actually, I kind of like the sound of that. But
Interesting thing about that organ is I was reading an interview with Tony Visconti, and he was saying that David really was struggling at the beginning to play that organ part and sing it at the same time. Yeah.
that's funny. Well, I actually really liked it, but otherwise, yeah, it's not. It's my least favorite track. I'll be honest. On
No,
the
it's definitely not my least favorite track. It's very goofy, not
Mhm.
the Laughing Gnome goofy, but
Yeah.
it's there. It's not one that would appear on my Bowie Essential playlist, but
Hmm.
um, definitely a good deep cut for sure. And I agree, it is a good closing track. But like I said, for me, the superior version is that two-part version that was re-recorded in 1970.
So
So
I
do
gotta check
yourself a
that.
favor and check that out.
I gotta check that one out, and I also have to check the wild the stripped down version of Wild Eyed Boy from Free Cloud.
Yep, check both of those out. And then, other than that, as far as B sides go, um,
Okay,
we
before you get into that, can I talk
I'll
about
go ahead.
another
I'm sorry.
one other song? So, as I mentioned earlier, I while prepping for this on Spotify, I was listening to both the 2015 remaster and the Tony Visconti 2019 mix, the new mix that just came out.
So
And
how is the new mix? Because I haven't listened to it yet.
the new mix is the best way to listen to this album. As I mentioned to
Wow,
you
really?
already, I've listened to at least five different. It has to be at least 4 or 5 different versions of this album. You have to hear the 2019 mix. It's so good. I
Okay, I
actually
will
feel like
definitely
it.
check that
I
out.
really feel like it made me appreciate the album a lot more. You can hear a lot more. You can like, for example, I was listening to the version of Space Oddity, when I listened to the 2015 remaster, and one thing I never really liked about that version is that you can hear both the higher backing vocals in one ear, and then you can hear David's main vocals in the other ear, and I hate that. I don't know why. It's just very jarring.
Oh, really?
In the headphones, I don't like it, but
See, I do like that. That's
I don't
that's
like
you don't
that.
like
But
that stereo balance. That's interesting.
it's different. It's different in the Visconti mix, and you can actually hear a lot more of what's going on in the song. I feel he does, and I always reference this. It's like one of those Steven Wilson remixes. It's that good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you really, I think, at least once should listen to that version of it because I really loved it. I thought it really enhanced the record a lot. But
Yeah, I will definitely check it out. It's funny that you said specifically that it enhances the record.
mhm,
My little quick side tangent.
mhm,
REM has been going through their catalog as far back since 2008,
mhm,
and they've been releasing 25th anniversary editions to each of their records. So, excuse me. So they just put out the 25th anniversary of their album Monster,
mhm.
originally released in '94. And Monster, if you were to have me rank my REM albums, I know this is not an REM podcast. If you had me ranking my REM albums, Monster would be at the not the very bottom, but definitely
Lower
down there,
tier.
lower tier for sure. But this 25th anniversary comes with a remaster and a remix. And I've been
Mhm,
really digging the remix version of the record. It's been really just bringing a whole new light and new appreciation to it.
mhm.
So I'll definitely have to check out this new mix.
Well, one of the big differences is this actually the Tony Visconti version of it actually includes the song called "Conversation Piece."
We're going to
Because
talk about that in a second. Yes, go ahead.
so that I've actually heard, and that I meant to mention it before, but I didn't. It's right after Wild Eyed Boy from Free Cloud, and between that and God Knows I'm Good. As far as like the song itself, it's pretty average, I'd say, like a kind of a light
Mhm.
acoustic piece, but and I don't think it's really necessary for the record, but it is kind of cool that he mixed, gave it a remix and threw it on there. So I don't know
That's
if it was
cool.
originally intended to be on the album or not, but it's on there. It's at least on the 2019 mix.
Okay, yeah, and I'm definitely going to check it out.
Hmm.
Speaking of conversation piece, actually, so as far as follow-up singles that
Hmm.
came out in between Space Oddity and The Man Who Sold the World, both of these songs actually were later re-recorded. The A-side single was The Prettiest Star,
Mm-hmm.
which was re-recorded for Aladdin Sane.
Yep.
And while I do like the Aladdin Sane version better, this early version is pretty cool. Again, we get a lot more Mick Ronson action, so it's a little
Well,
more
that's always a
raw
good thing.
sounding.
Yeah, I'm always for
Right.
Mick Ronson.
It's a lot more rawer sounding. I can't talk today.
Uh-huh.
Whereas the Aladdin Sane version is definitely much more polished.
Mm-hmm.
So that's worth checking out. But the B side is indeed Conversation Piece. And this version of the song I think is just okay.
Mm-hmm.
But Bowie actually years later re-recorded Conversation Piece and it was released as a bonus track on Heathen.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you that's the superior version.
I'm gonna
I
have to listen to that again
love
because I've heard Heathen. Like
I,
actually know the album fairly
well, if
well.
you like Heathen, then you will like this version of Conversation
Okay.
Piece. I mentioned Bowie's like more mature sounding vocals on Janine earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I just think the more mature vocals work on this particular version of Conversation Piece than the original. I agree. I think the original is just okay, uh, but the re-recorded version that appears on Heathen, which I think was originally supposed to end up on Toy, which never came to be. And we'll talk about Toy when we get to the Heathen episode, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to get too far ahead. But that version is the version to check out. That always appears on my Bowie playlist, is that version of Conversation Piece.
That will be good to know and gives me yet another reason to look forward to the Heathen episode. Aside from the fact that I just really am interested in hearing that album again. So.
Oh, Heathen's so good. I can't wait to get to Latter Day Bowie. I really can't. But I don't want to get too far ahead. Let's do our top three tracks.
And then wrap up. Okay. My top three tracks are obviously Space Oddity, big surprise. An Occasional Dream, which might surprise some people, but I love that tune. And I'm gonna have to go. I'm just gonna go with Unwashed and Somewhat Slightly Dazed.
Okay.
Love that tune.
Mine's pretty close to yours. My number one would also be Space Oddity, of course. My number two would be Unwashed and Somewhat Slightly Dazed.
Mm-hmm.
And then my number three would be Signet Committee.
Yep. Signet Committee was in the running, but it's just a little. Like I said, I still think it's a little too long. It's a cool song.
I agree.
It needs to be cut down.
Yeah. Final thoughts.
My final thoughts are, well, I should say this is one of the first albums, like full albums of his that I've heard. So, this kind of helped shape my overall, love of the man's work as it is. So for me, this is just an album that I haven't listened to, frankly, in quite a few years, but did used to listen to a lot back in the day. So this is one I would say, first of all, it's a vast, vast improvement from the first album. First of all. Second of all, I really, really love a lot of old folk music, especially from this time period. There's a lot of that in this record. There's a lot of kind of 60s psychedelia. There's elements of progressive rock. There's elements of what Bowie would become over the next couple albums into the 70s. I think rightly so, this should be considered the first true Bowie album. And I think it's got a lot to offer, man. There's a lot of great stuff here. It's not perfect, but you can see there's a lot of seeds of what the man will become and what he'll do in the future in this one.
Definitely. Here's something I just kind of thought of. Maybe something we can add in.
Sure.
For our final thoughts. But if you were to rate it out of 5, what would you give? What would you score this record?
Out of 5, I'd give it like a. Honestly, I really like it. I give it a 4 or a 3.54. I think I would have given it a 3.5. The Tony Visconti mix made it a 4.
Okay. My final thoughts for the most part are pretty similar to yours.
Mm-hmm.
I 100% agree that this is just miles better than the first album. This
I would say
really
it's 100,000 miles.
I think even the man himself, hey, see what you did there.
Yeah.
I would even the man himself, I think, considers this his first record.
Yeah.
I mentioned the box sets that have been released the past couple of years, and the first one doesn't even include the first record. So there you go.
Yep.
With that being said, I don't necessarily think this record's overrated, but I still think he's still figuring it out.
Yeah, I mean, is this Ziggy Stardust? No. Is it
No.
Diamond Dogs? Is it Low? Is it even Scary Monsters? No, it's not. But I think,
I think I mentioned this in the last episode. In my opinion, it's going to take 2 more records for him to get there. I feel the same way about The Man Who Sold the World. I think there are some really strong highlights on that record as well, just like this one. But for me, at least, Hunky Dory is really where the David Bowie story begins.
I personally think it starts here, but hey, I totally understand because Hunky Dory is a phenomenal album. So it's
it's fantastic from start to finish. I cannot wait.
Definitely a turning point. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Can't wait to get to Hunky Dory. But to be honest with you, I can't wait to get to The Man Who Sold the World as well, because like I said, there are a lot of strong moments on that one as well. I've thought about tinkering with the idea with doing a me, I like to do my own album what ifs, and I've thought about actually doing one, taking my favorite tracks off Space Oddity, my favorite tracks off The Man Who Sold the World. Not sure if that will work because they are definitely different sounding records, but an idea I've been tinkering with. But anyways, as far as rating this, I would give this album a 3 out of 5.
Okay.
The highs are high, and there's really nothing bad on here.
No, there isn't. None of it was. It's not like the first album where there's quite a few songs where you're just like, I don't even want to hear this. You can listen to this. It fits as an album, it flows well. It's
definitely cohesive sounding from start to finish. Yeah. There are a couple duds where they're just not memorable, and maybe duds isn't even the right term to use because then I'm implying that I think they're bad. Again, I don't think there is a bad track on here. They're just a couple not so memorable songs, at least for me. So I would give it a solid 3 out of 5.
And so we both have homework again. You listen to that Tony Visconti mix, and I'll listen to those other versions of what is it? Wild Eye Boy from Free Cloud, and what was the other one? Oh, the
Memory of the
Free Festival. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's make it a point to do that because I want to briefly talk about that in the next episode. Do a little sort of follow up on what I thought of the 2019 mix, and then what you thought of those 2 alternate tracks. So let's make it a point to do that so that we can share our opinions with the viewers.
You heard that, folks. That's going to happen.
And before we do wrap up, I do just want to sort of put out an apology, and that is we had mentioned as far back as the end of the King Crimson series that we were going to make the transition to Anchor, and guys, that hasn't happened still. We've been having some technical difficulties with utilizing Anchor. So we're working on it. We will get there. I apologize because we did say that.
It's also on me too, because I could easily have ripped all the audio and just uploaded it to Anchor, but I haven't done that yet. But when I get a little time, I will. It's just between everything, sometimes even finding that extra spare maybe 25 minutes that it would take to do that is difficult. So
guys, but yeah, our lives have just been insane right now. I mean, I'm just proud that we're at least consistent with our schedule. So give us that at least. So we've been consistent with the schedule so far of this new series, but we do promise that eventually we're going to make that transition. We want to continue to post these on YouTube as well, but for the sake of expanding a little bit and getting more people to listen, because I know amongst my group of friends, that's the one problem that they have that's prevented them to listening to all of our podcasts is that, I would love to listen to it, but it's really difficult for me to, listen to a podcast on YouTube that's going to eat up my data when I can just listen to it on Spotify or Pocket Casts or whatever you use to listen to, podcasts.
I have unlimited
I can just
data,
download it offline. That's how I listen to my podcast. So I totally get it, guys. We're working on it. Hopefully after the holiday break, we'll get better with that. But we're consistent with the schedule at least, so we've got something going for
Yeah,
us.
yeah, we're doing it, and we've been getting good views. So thank you guys for that. All of you who've been tuning in to the different episodes on YouTube. It's been great.
Yeah, no, seriously, guys, thank you, and please comment. Please let us know if we, um, you know, by being friendly and civil, of course, but let us know if we misinterpreted something, we missaid something,
Hmm.
or just share with us your thoughts on this record.
Yes, definitely.
But I think it's time to call it a wraps. What do you think?
I think it is too. And I want to give everybody a brief reminder that very soon, I have not forgotten from the last episode. I will be I will be publishing a video relatively soon that's unrelated to at least what we're talking about here. And it's just basically, it's going to be, it's going to be a countdown list of my favorite something. So you'll see.
My favorite something.
Yeah. My
Yes,
top
I know what
blank
he's.
of blank. Yeah.
I'm fortunate to know what it is you're talking about, and I
Yeah.
can't wait until you eventually get that posted. I'm
And
really excited for
I'm
that.
hoping we could do a follow up podcast to that where we can argue about it. It'll be great.
You keep breaking out, so I know you made a witty comment. I just have no idea what you said.
I said I can't. I said we have to do a follow up podcast to that video because I can't wait to argue with you about it.
Oh yes, because I'm sure there will be some debate for sure. Yeah, yeah.
All right,
But
let's
enough
wrap
said
this
there,
up.
guys. We'll
Yeah.
this is episode 2, discography discussion, David Bowie, Space Oddity. Stay tuned for episode 3. Of course, we're going to talk about the man who sold the world. But until next time,
See you guys later. Peace. Bye.
peace. Bye.